Well, everyone thinks they know the best Final Destination movie. What if I told you the best Final Destination movie is not the original? Let's get into it. Welcome to Fry Brothers. Today we will be slicing and dicing our way through all 6 of the Final Destination movies, ranking them from last place to first place. Let's get into it. Ryan, what is your 6th place choice?
So for me, coming in at number 6, I have no other than Final Destination 4. And this one isn't a surprise because this movie is quite clearly the worst in the franchise. When it comes to the premonition sequence, it just doesn't connect with the audience. And then the acting overall in this film is very poor acting. The lead that we get is not very memorable. So the kill sequences, the CGI is just straight up garbage. So I'm gonna have to put this one as my number 6. What about you?
My 6th place choice is The Final Destination. It's the number 4 movie in the franchise. Some of the reasons why this movie doesn't work is because the premonition doesn't work. When we think of our premonitions, we think of a scene where it strikes fear into you. You remember the original, it struck fear into us because many of us go on planes on a weekly or a daily basis, and one of the biggest fears is a plane crash. The other ones, like the log scene from the log truck from the number 2 movie, that one struck fear into us because most of us have been on the highways. We've been on the interstates, we've seen 18-wheeler trucks, we've seen log trucks. So when you see the bouncing of the logs and then how the logs decapitate the police officer in that particular movie and the premonition and things like that, it strikes fear into you that you're worried because these are common occurrences that can happen to any of us, and thus for it strikes fear into our hearts. But this one, NASCAR is a very niche type of sport. It's a sport that pretty much pertains or contained in the South. And so most of the people, if you do not live in the South, or even if you do live in the South, you've probably never been to a NASCAR event. So the connection, the fear that this particular premonition of showing a NASCAR race and cars flying all over the place and tires decapitating people's head is not believable because most folks do not go to NASCAR events. And then the fact that the CGI and overuse of the CGI in ways that don't make sense, a tire decapitating a human being just doesn't make sense. Or you have a motor flying 200 feet up in the air and then falling on someone. This doesn't make sense. And overall, the movie did not have any unique characters that we grew to love. They're very bland. And overall, it was very much so a trope. It almost felt like I was watching a scary movie parody of The Final Destination. So that one is my number 6 choice. Ryan, what's your number 5?
Coming in at number 5, I have Final Destination 1. And the reason why this one is my number 5 is because the overall film with the kill sequences, it's just not as high octane as I would like. The kill sequences seem to not be set up in a way that excites you or gives you a little bit of a adrenaline kick. They just seem very bland, very boring kill sequences. Now, the only good thing I'd say about them is that they don't use CGI a whole lot, but overall, they're just very bland. And then the cast, I don't care particularly too much for in this film. And I think this film should have had a little bit of a comedic touch to it, but it just quite doesn't do it. It's more of a serious tone. And so that's the reason why I'm going to have Final Destination 1 as my number 5. What about you?
So my number 5 has to be Final Destination number 3. So one of the interesting things about this movie is it has the opening premonition being the roller coaster. Many of you, if you've lived as a millennial, that was something that we grew up doing through our free time. But the problem is that the older that you get, if you are not in the millennial generation, this doesn't really hit home to you because you're so used to being on your phone. You're so used to technology, AI, and finding entertainment inside rather than outside, going to Six Flags or going to any other amusement park here. So the older that I get, as well as newer generations, I don't feel as though this film hits home for them. Additionally, this film's cast, while it does have some notable cast members, the overall substance of buying into these characters as college students who've gone to the same school and who would be hanging out together is not believable at all. It is not believable that these people are friends, that they have shared experiences outside of just going to the same school or being born around the same time. And I really didn't like the ending and how it tried to give us a surprise ending. And I felt like it was playing itself and trying to put one over the original, which didn't really work out. So it is my number 5. Ryan, what's your number 4?
Coming in at number 4 is Final Destination 3. And the reason why it comes in at number 4 is because it just seems like it doesn't add anything new to the Final Destination franchise or universe. It seems like this film is a little bit shorter than what I would like. And then the kills seem to be very CG-esque. It relies a lot on CGI. And then the fact that the opening premonition being a roller coaster, that just doesn't connect with me in this situation, a person that hasn't ridden a roller coaster in many years. So this doesn't really connect with me on something that I would do every day. And so with that being said, I'm gonna have Final Destination 3 at number 4. So what about you, Kevin? What's your number 4?
So my number 4 is Final Destination 5. So this movie was definitely an improvement from the previous one, which was the Final Destination 3D. And as we know, and as most people have pointed out, that particular one was the worst film of the franchise. So this was a good rebound. So in that, it does provide us with better kill sequences. It provides us with the gymnastics sequence, which is one of the most notable kill scenes in the entire franchise. But some of the deaths were very predictable. For example, the laser surgery death, that one was very predictable, and several others were very predictable, including its sort of twist at the end of having one of the guys that survived actually get taken out there when in the final scene. Another problem that I have with this movie is it seems to buy into tropes. And a lot of times, if you are someone who's watched a lot of films, whether you're a minority or not a minority, you do encounter, especially in the horror genre, that they have tropes for certain minorities. In this particular film, while the person who's African American dies last, the person of African American is not seen throughout this film until the very end, at the beginning and the end. And so there's not really a buildup. There's not really a three-dimensional character that pertains to our characters who are minority. And so that's the problem that I have with this particular film. And additionally, there were a lot of other issues with character development and characters who were not minorities as well. And it just didn't seem like I could buy into these people as wanting to hang out. And who knows, what place do you work at where you get together and hang out with a bunch of 20-somethings and go to the city? I don't know of any place like that except for sport teams and maybe a few other things. But in a business professional environment, that's not the case. So this one is my number 4. Ryan, what's your number 3?
So for me, coming in at number 3, I have the Final Destination number 5. And this movie definitely returned to form from Final Destination 4. I thought that this movie, it has some pretty decent kill sequences. The opening sequence is up there as one of the better ones in the franchise. The problems with the film is you have a good bit of unlikable characters, with the Isaac character being the main one, and then the Olivia, that's the girl, I believe, that gets the LASIK eye surgery. And then another issue is that the CGI is better than Final Destination 4, but it's still not that great. And it's not as good as Bloodlines, in my opinion. But with that being said, all of these considerations, I'm gonna keep Final Destination 5 at number 3. Kevin, what is your number 3?
So my number 3 is Final Destination 2. So I know many of you have this particular film as your first place or your second place choice. And so many different creators that I have watched their videos say that, oh, well, everybody knows the log scene and the opening premonition is the best. If you didn't think about the logs and stuff like that, and the truckers and the fear of the logs on the trucker log type scenario until you saw this film. While that may be the case for you guys, it's not the case for me. We have our late grandfather was a lumberjack and did have a log truck similar to that there. And we remember I would go play outside at his house after he had passed, at my grandmother's house, and I would see the big log truck there with a trailer full and logs and stuff like that. So it doesn't hit me the same way as maybe it hits other people, because I know that he passed due to a logging accident. And so that fear is not the same for me as maybe it hits home for others. But I did like the particular movie. I like that it expands outside of just the high school movie where you just have people playing different tropes of high school people in a movie. This one, you have the police officer, you have the lady who's in her 30s and pregnant with a child, you have a few other people, walks of life people, a teacher, etc. It makes it more entertaining because we're seeing people come together at different walks of life to try to fight against death. So I really enjoyed this particular movie, and I give it my third place choice. Ryan, what's your number 2?
So for me, coming in at number 2, I have no other than Final Destination 2. And it's hard because y'all already know what my number 1 is going to be. But Final Destination 2, I wanted it to tie with my number 1 because this is one of the better or the best of the franchise. This is Final Destination at its finest. When people think of Final Destination, they think of Final Destination 2 because they think of the log trucks. You can go ask any of your friends if they drive behind log trucks and they're going to tell you no, because that opening premonition resonates with so many people. Log trucks are very common down here in the South. I don't know about other parts of the country, but down here in the South, they're very common, and people will tell you they will never drive behind a log truck because of this movie. So that is one of the main reasons why it's up here as my number 2. And then on top of that, the practical effects in this movie are pretty good. It doesn't have a whole lot of CGI. There's a few CGI kills. I believe the pothead guy, Rory, his kill or death sequence was a little bit Uncanny Valley CGI. But other than that, all the other ones. Oh, and then also, I believe Ali Lauder's character of Clear, hers was a little bit CGI-esque. But other than that, all the other death sequences were done pretty well. They were set up very elaborately, and they were high octane, and they kept you on your heels. And that's what I like to see when I see a Final Destination movie. The main thing that brings it down is the fact that I think this film was a little bit shorter than it should have been. Mm-hmm. And then the actors were not the best. They were okay. So that is why I have it as my number 2. So Kevin, what about you?
Coming in number 2 is Final Destination 2000. So when I saw this movie for the first time, I was a child. This movie was one of the first horror movies that I actually got into outside of the 1980s style horror with Freddy and Jason. So this was very interesting because as a child, I was wanting to know who's going to be the killer. It says these people are dying in the movies and stuff like that, but we find out throughout the movie that death is its own entity and death cannot be seen. So this one struck a chord for me, and I really like the fact that it did have a lot of suspense. Opening premonition there with the plane crash, or the death there, the bathtub death. Those really hit home for me. I like the fact that it was grounded as a real story. It really felt that Alex and Clear's type of connection is someone likes a real high school type connection where it's not straight up girlfriend and boyfriend, but you can tell that maybe these people will become boyfriend and girlfriend at some point in time because of the interest that they have for one another, as well as the friendship and bond that they have. So I really enjoyed this movie. I love the fact that it introduces death as an entity and that we have Tony Todd, who's delivering the lines at the morgue to provide us with how death actually works. So I give this movie my number 2 pick. Ryan, what's your number 1?
So you all already know what it is. Number 1 is Final Destination 6 Bloodlines. This movie is the best Final Destination movie of all time. From the opening premonition sequence to even the lackluster, and yes, I did say lackluster, third act of this film. This film delivered one of the greatest, if not the best, death sequence of all time in that MRI machine death. That was a masterpiece. Me being in the healthcare field, I can tell you that basically MRI machines are very large magnets, and just seeing this put into an actual death sequence in a Final Destination film, it resonated with me well. So that death sequence is one of my favorites. Also, the family dynamic I thought was a better way of approaching the story this time. Instead of it just being in the order of how people died in the premonition, I like the way it was set up to where it was mainly targeting bloodlines, and so whoever was in the bloodline of the oldest of the family would be targeted first to their children, and then the next bloodline would go, and then the next one. So that was really great. And then I like the fake outs, and then also the CGI was pretty good in this film. So this is why this film is my number 1. What about you, Kevin?
So my number 1 is going to be the same as well. Final Destination Bloodlines. I award this film the Crown Carnage for the best film in this particular series. The reasons why is because it expands on the Final Destination franchise. A lot of the other movies, like number 4, tried to expand in weird ways with this 3D CGI type stuff that didn't really work. Number 5 tried to expand by giving us this kind of scene over the bridge. To me, kind of worked, kind of didn't. Roller coaster there in number 3 didn't quite work, but this one really hits home. What hits home more than family? People say, well, your friends can be stronger. You can have stronger relationships with your friend than you have your family. That's true. But one thing you can't get, you'll always have, is your family in this world. Friends come and go, but family is here to stay until the very end. Whether you marry into a family or whether you are born into that particular family. So I like the fact that it expands the franchise by focusing on the bloodline rather than, like Ryan said, of the premonitions in the order or the reverse order of how people died in the premonitions. This provided variety, this provided a uniqueness, makes it distinct from the previous films. And what can I say? This was Tony Todd's last appearance, not only in the Final Destination movies, but in his filmography altogether, as he passed away shortly after this film was created. And it was a sobering experience to hear him utter how he's going to enjoy in this particular movie, how he's going to enjoy his last times, his last few moments in this world. It makes us really think about, are you really taking in and really soaking in the time that you have in this world? So that was super important to me. And I like the overall cast of the film. I felt overall they did a good job. I have a few quabbles about the particular performances, but overall felt like it was a good film, delivering us some good kills, like the MRI kill. And then just right after the MRI kill, you have the candy machine spiral that flies over there and takes out the younger brother. So great movie, and it's my crown carnage. So moving on, Ryan, what will we be working on?
So next we're working on the premonition rankings for Final Destination.
Awesome. And guys, we would like to know what your rankings are for all 6 of these movies. So please put your rankings in the comment section below. And remember, Fright Fam, be watchful.